Hi, BC here. Welcome to BC Nephro. Today I'm going to give an introduction to dialysis rounding. This is the way I like to approach evaluating patients when I'm doing outpatient dialysis rounds, outpatient dialysis rounding. Now there's a number of important things that are addressed, and there will be future videos that go into more detail. These are things including the adequacy of dialysis, the dialysis access, the anemia status, the mineral bone status, the nutrition status, and these are all very important. These things are also actively managed, a lot of them by the dialysis staff. There's an anemia manager, the dietitian will go over things, there's an access manager and things like this. So these are critical things, but there's safeguards to make sure that the quality appropriate things happen to all the patients. So when I'm going on dialysis rounds, I like to make sure that I pay attention to some of the things that are not actively managed and maybe overlooked if I don't pick up on them. And these are some of the things I'm going to talk about in this video today. So the first things has to do with certain electrolytes, specifically potassium bicarbonate. Another thing has to do with the full CBC, including the white blood count and the platelet count. And the third thing is to think about medications that the patient's on. So to talk about the electrolytes, potassium and bicarbonate. Now, if you realize what dialysis is, it's a semi-permeable membrane, and there's a concentration gradient. The concentration is higher in certain things in the blood, lower in certain things in the dialysate, and there's some diffusion, so they approach equilibrium. So we all know about potassium being hyperkalemia as being a potentially fatal problem for dialysis patients. But there also can be issues with the potassium shifts that occur. Now, most of potassium in the body is intracellular. So, the dialysis isn't going against the intracellular compartment. So there's transient hypokalemia until that reequilibration from the intracellular space to the extracellular space occurs. So if a standard potassium bath is 2, there may be a 3 potassium bath in some cases, but if the potassium is 2 and the serum potassium is pre-dialysis, let's say, is 5.5, those will equilibrate down toward each other during dialysis, and then after dialysis there will be a slight rebound. Now, the thing to be aware of that's not necessarily protocolized in dialysis patients is if the patient's potassium is running relatively low to begin with. Now, maybe the patient has a GI illness, diarrhea, some other reason, and their potassium is lower than normal. Maybe their pre-dialysis potassium is less than 4, 3.5. Now, if that patient stays on a 2 potassium bath, intradialytically, their potassium may may even go less than 3 before the re-equilibration. So if you have a patient who's a cardiac patient on digoxin, that transient hypokalemia may be an issue, and it's something to be aware of. If the potassium is less than 4, they shouldn't be on a 2 potassium bath. They should be on a higher potassium bath. Likewise, large potassium shifts, 1 potassium baths have been associated with mortality. There's huge, even if the patient has very high potassium, large shifts, be aware of this. Similar things with bicarbonate. So the bicarbonate, if the bicarbonate bath is relatively high, and the serum bicarbonate goes high, there's maybe a metabolic alkalosis intradialytically, and this may be associated with cardiac events or mortality as well. Now, the second thing is, although it was a CBC, although the hemoglobin is actively managed, the full CBC is not actively managed. So pay attention to things with white blood count, platelet count. It's not uncommon to see leukopenia, which typically is mild, but sometimes there may be a clue of another disease. There may be neutropenia, and likewise with thrombocytopenia, you need to be aware of a potential risk for bleeding, rule out heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. So that's the second thing. The last thing I want to talk about is the importance of medications in reviewing dialysis patients, and there's 3 things that I like to think about. First is there's certain pre-dialysis medications that should be discontinued because they're not necessary, maybe duplicates of therapy once a patient starts dialysis. Things like oral iron, things like sodium bicarbonate. These are things that are not needed because they're often regulated with dialysis. Now, this may not seem like dangerous, but with the polypharmacy, any medication that you can discontinue is helpful for the patient. The second thing has to do with the use of immunosuppressive medications, both for a failed transplant and for an acute GN that maybe hasn't recovered. Make sure that these are appropriately weaned and that the immunosuppression is not continued unnecessarily when there's no benefit and just the risk of the immunosuppression. The third thing is to be aware of certain medications that either are contraindicated with low GFR and dialysis or are renally excreted and need significant dose adjustments. You need to think about diabetic meds, anticoagulants, antibiotics, and pain medications here. So there'll be more information. If you please leave your comments below, questions and comments. There'll be more information on the link in the description to the blog article. We'll go into these things in more detail. And also on the other link, you can sign up to receive emails, updates of the future blog articles. So thanks for visiting BC Nephro. See you next time.